The Atlantic has published an article titled "The End of Reading is Here" by Rose Horowitz. I feel like we should talk about it because a lot of the anger is going to be focused towards the clickbait headline, when I think the purpose of the article is to talk about the literacy problem and not the book publishing industry numbers that we see around book sales and new bookstores opening up all over the places, etc. etc. I had a lot of thoughts reading this article, more specifically 5 pages worth of thoughts, and I figured, you know what, let's go. Let's discuss the literacy crisis, because yes, there is a literacy crisis. Everything has to be simplified. Emails, books, blogs, essays, posts, and the intention behind that, of course, is accessibility. The article opens with the Library of Alexandria. The book Make It Stick has this wonderful line about metaphors. Good metaphors are generative. The psychologist Donald Schoen described metaphors as something that generate new perceptions, explanations, and inventions. Library of Alexandria is pretty good as a metaphor for this, because unlike popular perception that the library was burned down by Julius Caesar, that wasn't the case. The library disappeared over years, a death by 1,000 cuts, as they say. And the literacy crisis is also following a similar sort of a path. The article later on cites Neil Postman's Amused to Death, which is a fantastic nonfiction book, which goes into a post-literate era where entertainment draws a lot of the focus away from everything. Make it simple, make it catchy, all of that. This is what Death by 1,000 Cuts looks like for literacy, because literacy is not entertaining for all. It is intentionally difficult, because when you struggle your way through that difficulty, you have individual thoughts of your own, and those thoughts is where the benefits of literacy kind of sort of show themselves. So the Library of Alexandria aspired to collect all the knowledge in the world. Alexander the Great thought of it courtesy of learnings from his teacher Aristotle. Ptolemy I is the one who ended up building the library. Based on accounts we have, it had classrooms, lecture halls, rooms for the scholars to stay at. There also were massive shelves of scrolls. Now these scrolls were acquired using bait and switch sort of a technique. They would get the scrolls, the scribes would copy them, and then they would return the copies and keep the originals with themselves. Ironically, it is these copies that survive, because of course fate has a funny way of doing things in this world. Scholars used to be invited to study in these lovely halls, and when they came in, the number of scrolls increased. Now they're interacting with those scrolls and creating scrolls of their own, which are being added to these specific categories. This is how the library grew. Greek leadership was replaced by Roman, and then the Christians came, then the Muslims. Little by little, nothing of the original library remained. Why? Because these libraries contained original thoughts rolled into little cylinders. These original thoughts met a fear of knowledge or information and belief systems that are familiar to you or known to you, and of course fear won. There's also this arrogance to the destruction of the library, that the past does not matter, that we can win over the history when history is difficult to overcome. We can destroy it, yes, but we cannot eliminate it. Literature was not really accessible, It was for the elites. And with this literacy trend, I'm not talking about how many people are buying books and reading books. I'm talking about literacy, engaging with difficult books and having discussions around the same. That is becoming niche again. And there's so much effort that has gone into making it accessible over the years. And yet here we are, right back where we started or going towards where we started. And I think that is incredibly sad. The article goes on to cite statistics from the United States of America, like falling reading rates and rising gambling rates, which I thought was a strange thing to mention. The doomer narrative continues by saying proficiency is dropping, fewer than 10% are reading newspapers, most people prefer digital, that too video. This fixation towards numbers, mentioning all of these different statistics that you can read in the article, I have linked it in the description. It made me wonder why we put so much emphasis on quantity and such little emphasis on quality. This brings the book publishing industry into the discussion, because every time you try to talk about the literacy crisis, someone will come in the comments and remind you we have had more bookstores open up. We saw a lot of books being published and self-published. To them, I ask, what is being published more of? Adults are reading young adult fiction. Maybe because they want to be entertained, maybe because they are developing a reading hobby. We don't really know. But it is worrying that we are seeing the simpler side of the literature industry grow, while the complicated literary side of it continues to shrink. So yes, maybe more people are reading, say, 100 books a year. What books are listed under those 100 books? Sometimes you just want something non-complicated and fun. And of course, you can definitely read whatever you want to read. But the question here is, why are so many people only reading these books? The issue here is only, because the word only is bringing in this, quote, literary crisis. I'm not really going to cite the article here because I want you to read it yourself. While reading through the statistics, I also had this thought of the patron saints of the arts. Most of the arts were funded by the elites, the super rich of whatever era we talk about. Alexandria was a fully sponsored experience. If you were invited to the Library of Alexandria as a scholar, you got paid, you got tools, you got information, you got access to experts. All of that was made available in this one campus, which was fully funded while the Greeks were in charge. The patronage went away. So did the infrastructure. The question here is, do the arts in 2026 have patrons? Because to me, it looks like it doesn't. We have a few book awards here and there. We have fellowships and grants, things of this sort. But in general, do we have massively funded initiatives around enhancing or improving literacy for people? I don't think we have that. To me, it seems like those in power would rather we stay simple-minded and entertainment-focused. Literature is not really celebrated on a massive level. I'm not talking about putting books on pedestals. We definitely do that. Reading is definitely talked about more passionately as a hobby than the others. But is literature truly celebrated outside of the obvious spaces? I don't think it is. Companies, as well as I would suppose politicians, are dedicating so much of their budget in stripping away nuance from conversations. They do it in the name of storytelling or accessibility or understandability or all of these other words that have been turned into talking points, because you bring any of these points up and they brand you as a snob. They try to strip the nuance out of complex ideas. Companies and their algorithms have made sure that complex ideas that are stripped and turned into quotable nothing burgers that sound great, but don't really make the viewers or listeners or readers think. This is what trends, and this is what is being dubbed as the end of reading. The article carries on, of course, by going into the political direction a little bit. And this is when I remembered this quote from the TV show The West Wing. Nothing is more powerful in a democracy than a well-informed electorate. The question then arises, if given a choice, would you preserve the Library of Alexandria if it was you? Because preserving it means you have to put in a lot of time. Objective truth kind of sort of always requires us to protect it by force. Most of us are so distracted with everything these days, whether it is angry at the news, feral about the sports, upset about the personal life, or frustrated with a job, or any sort of distraction. When it comes to information we receive, largely speaking, do we pause and evaluate before we react? I don't think many of us do, because of course there's so many things to do, such little time. You are prioritizing. Nuance is one of the first things that gets axed when we start prioritizing. Because of this, we're clearly not reading between the lines. Reading, like most things, is a skill. It's also a mode of communication that you have to have a lot of patience for, because someone has written things down and you have to try to guess what did they mean exactly based on the literary clues they have provided. It is a fruitless sort of activity that yields surprising fruits eventually. Not to go anthropologically speaking, but whoever it was that pressed their hand into the wet walls and blew ochre on it, just to let the rest of us know centuries later that they were there. This is the first, I suppose, act of communicating that we know of so far. From that to little carvings, scribbles, or shapes of human beings or animals or plants or things of this sort. While it is not writing in the form that we know today, it is writing in a rudimentary form. It is expression. And when we see these paintings and these carvings, we try to assume what were the cave people thinking of when they made this. This sort of activity, I think, altered the human consciousness, because we don't really need to convey specific information of this sort. We don't really know whether animals and plants communicate as specifically as humans do, but it seems like they don't. It would be safe to say that this particular sort of behavior is what altered our consciousness or helped alter the consciousness. If we turn our backs on it and choose simplicity all the time, of course it is going to have some consequences. A sad sort of connection formed for me, because I remembered Jean-Paul Marat, who used to write for L'Ami, the friend of the people, as the voice of working Parisians during what we now know as the French Revolution. His words, while were not directly responsible for the reign of terror, the September massacre of 1792, but his words were responsible for firing people up to the point that they dragged others into the streets to murder them. Short form video also has the power to do the same. We saw so many lynchings happening all over the place. But with Marat's writing specifically, the impact we see versus the impact we have from one or two incidents in a city where there was a crime and people were aggravated about it. But then they were not aggravated enough to ask for change, to hold the powers that be responsible for what was the system completely failing the victims. The question then became, do we in 2026 grow beyond acquired beliefs? Because if someone offers me a radically different idea, I will maybe scoff it away before I read it, think about it, argue with it, discuss it, etc., etc. Why is scoffing it away kind of sort of the first impulse? That's sad, right? So, to reiterate, this is not about reading words on a page. As the article says, we are probably reading more words per day than ever before. The problem here is, do those words change their meaning when they go in your head and get processed? In most instances, the answer is no, because the process step has largely been eliminated in this post-literate era, as the article likes to call it. The thing with words in books is they cannot be altered. The thought mosquitoes are preserved in the amber for the remainder of time till a John Hammond type character comes and creates Jurassic Park out of the same. Then I truly went political, because if you read the constitutions of all the democratic nations in existence, you will notice how it is all text based. Written laws, Bill of Rights, ballots, public records, penal code, all of this is written text. If we stop reading critically, will the constitution remain the shield that protects the electorate from those in power? Or will it become the sword that attacks us in every way possible? I think the answer is very, very clear in the world that we live in today. Because look around you, just look around you and tell me everything is bright and beautiful. Everyone is happy and satisfied. The article is in the Atlantic, so of course it's catering to the United States of America. But I remembered a case that came to the Supreme Court of India. A notification was issued by the government of Karnataka that allowed private medical colleges to raise their fees to exorbitant rates, unless, of course, the student has been admitted under, quote, government seat quota. Now, when Indians read notifications like this, I think they do two things. First, chalta hai. This is how the country works. We are going to be fine. We will find a way to adjust. We will borrow money from relatives or get something from a bank or sell the jewelry, whatever. But we'll secure your admission, you don't worry. And the second is adjust. We will adjust to the tyranny of the government, because that is what you are supposed to do. Otherwise, you are not going to survive in a country of over 1 billion people. One student, Ms. Jain, filed a petition in the Supreme Court challenging this notification by specifically citing the right to education. And she won. The Supreme Court of India had this to say: the right to education flows directly from right to life. The right to life and the dignity of an individual cannot be assured unless it is accompanied by the right to education. The state is under a constitutional mandate, words, to provide educational facilities at all levels to its citizens. The student read the notification, she processed it, she possibly had resources to file the case or have knowledge about Article 21. That is how she ensured that many students didn't have to pay exorbitant fees. The powers that be it political or be it capitalistic, really benefit from you not being literate. And literate here is not about reading books alone. Literate here is, are you processing what you are reading in real time and having thoughts about it? The article then goes into dissecting what a post-literate society looks like and may look like. It cites some anecdotal examples from librarians, teachers, etc., where students are having strong reactions to missing their devices instead of missing family, which is concerning. But then I look at myself and the panic that sets in when, oh my god, where's the phone? So we do have a physiological response to this technology sort of not being around us. It then cites some concerning studies about students not being able to form logical connections. Very upsetting, very doomerish again. But I'm sure there is some truth to it. The article says one thing which I really liked, and that is words to alter our brain chemistry. And I immediately remembered the word shung in Susan Choi's Flashlight. It's a name that has meanings, of course. When that name came in the book, I remember sitting with it for hours because it was so heartbreaking. The way I processed certain geopolitical realities that sort of changed because of just one word from one fictional book I read. And I don't know whether that word altered my brain chemistry, but it did alter the way I perceived something. Books make you use your senses a bit more because not all books are written using a simple language. So you are making your brain do a little workout. And the brain is a muscle, so it likes the workout. I'll tell you what, as a book editor, I see that too many ideas is also something that leads to a writer's block. So if a writer has this thing going for them, I'll write about this and that and this and that and this and that, they end up not writing about anything at all. They don't really know where to put their focus into. I think that is what ends up happening with short form video content as well. You can look at your saved folders to do this little activity. Try to recall how much you remember about this post or reel or short or whatever it is that you saved. Most of us don't really remember most of the information we gained from these reels. This is not to say that they don't inform us. Text and video both inform us. Do we process and recall information in the same sorts of ways with both of these mediums? I don't think we do. The article sort of goes into comprehension now and how comprehension, critical reasoning, all of this has been going down. Of course, it has been going down for a while now, and that made me sad again because everywhere around the world, we mostly have post-literal leaders in charge who use very, very simple sorts of language to cater to people who prefer entertainment because the alternative is just too difficult or too upsetting, or I don't really know. The article cites Donald Trump and how he uses language like Sleepy Joe, boing boing ting ting. And then, of course, closer to home, we have Abki Baar Modi Sarkar. Over. The slogans linked to identities and labels. Dr. Hans Rosling said this in the book Factfulness. When you label something, you stop thinking. And it makes so much sense that you have a simplistic sort of message that is attached to a label, a populist label, and then it is shipped via coordinated campaigns, and of course people fall for it. It would be difficult not to fall for it. The current ruling party of India has what is known as the IT cell. It's not really the IT cell, but that's what people call it. That specializes in making aura cuts and what I like to call pappu cuts. And these cuts are made from long speeches. Depending on the political opinions, people will laugh at the videos, they will get mad, and then they would scroll away. There is almost no curiosity around the context of the clip, aura or pappu. And the context, which is the longer speech, is where literacy becomes important, because is the politician talking about important issues like air, food, fuel, electricity, jobs, all of that, or are they doing the populist stuff? We know it's the latter. Which is why they are in power. Of course, we cannot have any discussion now without the mention of AI. So the article does mention AI and how the basic promise of AI is simplicity. Most of us use and talk about is the stuff that creates the illusion of intelligence and competency by eliminating the entire process. What we have is a prompt. It's a little gauche to say, but sucking at something before getting good is actually very, very good for developing a skill, because if you don't suck at something, how would you develop taste? And if you don't have taste, how will you develop talent? How will you develop that voice, that style that is characteristically you? Article now comes into the concluding bits by bringing us back to the Library of Alexandria. How reading with a literary bent is becoming a niche activity. It is all just so unfortunate. This entire journey it took to open the gates that guarded literacy. Many people look at that and they're like, nope, not interested. I would much rather do the simple stuff. Why is it so easy to embrace simplicity? Why can't we be simple about literacy? Why don't we give complexity and putting effort a shot? I know a lot of us feel very safe with the knowledge that all the knowledge of the world is stored in these lovely computer chips. But hear me out. What if it wasn't? What if all these crazy statements being made by these tech CEOs come to pass, where intelligence becomes a commodity like electricity that you have to buy? What if that comes to pass? What will you do then? Because I can guarantee you that which is free right now, the videos we scroll, the information we look up willy-nilly, they are going to put money on it. I think it's an important thing to consider. Discussions, I think, is the anecdote to this problem, because people are innately curious. It's not that they aren't. Most of us have been discouraged from engaging in activities that encourage literacy. I don't want to comment on whether this article is good or not. I do think it fixates on the past a lot. I also felt like it is excessively American because, of course, it's the Atlantic. It also just made me very sad reading it. But it also kind of sort of made me think. Yeah, 4 pages worth of think, front and back. If something makes you do that, pick up a pen and engage with it furiously, sadly, happily, excitedly, whatever you want to put there. So read it. Let me know what your thoughts are about the article, about the video, whatever else you want. Thank you for watching. Like Auli, pick up a book. Okay?